Peace to those who come in peace, consciousness, and righteousness. I'm going to take this opportunity to express certain ideas for the first time together, as a response to some questions I recently received about my thoughts on certain spiritual topics pertaining to the natures of divinity and religion. While generally speaking I do follow a Gnostic spiritual path, I don't argue with people about their religion. In fact, I agree with everyone about the validity of their religion. My purpose in creating these blogs is primarily to share information that ties traditions together, rather than continues the trends towards separation and conflict that are so evident here on the net and the world across. I'm pretty familiar with Christianity since that's the tradition within which I was raised. So many of the statements that I make, while being made in a holistic tradition-spanning context, will come from lessons that those who are familiar with Christianity will recognize. With that said, I do have one basic belief that I disagree with the institution of the church about, a belief that hasn't generally been interpreted in the right context. I'll use this one example to segue into a general discussion regarding sin, the nature of separation, and the history of spiritual thought as it relates to its earliest origins. We'll also be discussing karma and the synthesis of religions that have resulted in the constellation of religious belief systems that we see here in the Americas primarily, although the general trend of this discussion will be worldwide in scope and implication. The doctrine that I want to begin with is that of original sin. The doctrine of original sin, which is held to state that all men are sinners and the world is evil, that fire and brimstone await us, and that only the elect who follow certain prescriptions during their lifetimes will reach the kingdom of heaven. Romans 5:18 is usually one of the primary sources used to support the doctrine of original sin to the laity. Romans 5:18 states, "Consequently, just as the result of one trespass was condemnation for all men, so also the result of one act of righteousness was justification that brings life for all men." This doctrine, utilizing Adam and Jesus as oppositional extremes, seems to expound more directly upon the dichotomous nature of the world, and is a logical treatise on the nature of reality itself. The trespass of Adam through Eve being the original sin that led humanity to expulsion from the Garden of Eden. The sacrifice of Jesus, conversely, is the way through the angel guarding the garden's bounties with his burning sword, and is, therefore, the way back to God. But the way the doctrine is applied twists Christianity, because Judaism and Islam do not express the same tenet, being absent the mitigating promise of Jesus the Christ as Savior and Redeemer. Such a system promotes guilt, hopelessness, groupthink, and abject dependence upon authority figures, as well as a retreat from the world, rather than embracing of it. A giving or siphoning of power from believers to be channeled upward through the church hierarchy and its rituals to make it through us and back to God, which, since all is God, is pertinent whether the energy goes through darkness or the light on its way back to the source. Anyway, when black folks got took from Africa and brought here to the Americas, our Christian overlords and enslavers slammed Christianity upside our heads. And when we'd finished shaking out the cobwebs, we looked at it and said, wait a minute, this system looks a bit familiar. We jazzed and blued it up with our Africanisms, returned it to its source, and Eurocentric Christianity has not been the same since. But our African gods and goddesses followed us to the New World. Really, their power had lain dormant during European expressions of Christian religiosity as a result of centuries of further compromise and weakening of its abstract and non-material spiritual aspects, as undertaken by the institutional aspect of the overall control system. There were black and brown as well as red folks here to meet our ancestors, and Columbus knew he hadn't discovered a thing. And they, along with us and all of our mixed-breed glory as European, indigenous, and African strains of humanity all met and coalesced here in the Americas in every aspect of human interaction, have proceeded along a new path leading to some further expression of human creativity upon the face of this earth. The religious systems they personified combined all three worlds, indigenous herbology, African spiritualism, and European Christianity, to come up with the interrelated synthetic cosmologies of Santeria, Candomblé, and Vodun, among many other minor systems. You wonder if all or any of this falls under the guise of Satanism? No, and a slightly muted and qualified yes. The ancient Kemetic religion, the mystery systems, traveled from East to West Africa with Nilotic peoples fleeing Asiatic and Muslim hordes between about 2000 BC and the slavery era. The Central and Western African traditions, their religious systems, as well as their languages, retain the general structure of that self-same religion. The best example of this is Ifa, the religion of the Yoruba people. same structure, one overarching divinity and a hierarchy of gods and goddesses, powers and principalities as the Judaic religions. It was a natural fit, of course, since Moses was a priest of Kemet and the adept of the mystery system himself. The formulation of the Hebrew religion incorporated the Kabbalah as its highest expression, which is a direct mirror of the Tree of Life ideology of the Black Lands, which traveled north upon the Nile through the Nubian originators of the Nile Delta pharaohdoms, from the very springs of human evolution in Central Africa and its earliest peoples, the Batwa or Pygmies, in their conception of Beth, who led to Ptah, the god of gods. When our ancestors were enslaved here in the Americas and weren't allowed to practice their indigenous religions openly in the Caribbean and South America, these systems, Vodun, Santeria, Candomblé, fell into place as the Africans used the Christian God, Jesus, angels, Mary, the apostles, and saints to transpose their religious system over the Christian. It worked perfectly, considering the origins of the Judeo-Christian spiritual system. As further evidence of this reality, the myths of Horus and many other sun god savior figures in the ancient world, as well as the rites, rituals, and ceremonies attendant therein to Jesus, are too numerous and too close to deny with any degree of credibility. We re-injected our traditions of transpossession, musicality, and life spirit into Christianity and revived it, resulting in the predominance now of evangelical Christianity in the United States and the world across. God is the same God today as he was yesterday and will be tomorrow. He don't change. The names and particulars of the game change, but the expression remains the same in the hearts, minds, and souls of the people. But the institution of the church twists it for power in this world, as all other former religious institutions relying upon a pyramidal, hierarchical form of worship do. So that also remains the same, and again an expression of that overall dichotomy. In the brightest light there is the hint of darkness, and in the darkest night, the promise of light. Corruption and perfection must exist simultaneously. In the end, one cannot exist without the other, and that dichotomy, again, is the very basis, the very structure of creation itself. Energy is light. It's neither created nor destroyed. It's just transformed, often by external processes or agents. Life is vibrations, movement. We are but stardust when it comes down to it, since our bodies, all material objects, were once parts of stars, and we remain projectile points of consciousness, accelerating into infinity, all fleeing that last diffusion of individuality and experience stemming from the zero-point instance of the Big Bang.